Welcome to Crime Stoppers, presented by Main Street Bank, a production of WTRF7, Love OV, and Crime Stoppers Upper Ohio Valley. I'm Nick Nash, your host. Last week, we gave you the rundown of the mysterious murder of Kyle Morgan, a high school student from Moundsville, West Virginia. It was June of 2016 when Kyle Morgan, a high school student at John Marshall High School in Moundsville, caught a ride to Wheeling with the intent to jump on a Greyhound bus to visit his mother in Kentucky. Sometime between his arrival in Wheeling and the next day, Kyle was killed by blunt force trauma to the head and left under the Fort Henry Bridge near Heritage Trail. I'd like to take a moment and thank everybody that watched last week's episode. The entire concept of this show is to keep the case fresh in the minds of you, the viewer. I've had a lot of folks reach out to me to tell me about Kyle as a person and to share some things that they've heard about the case. I'm currently working on a way to answer some questions to you, the viewer, outside of the show. So please stay engaged as we continue to cover the details. If you think you know something about the case or what happened to Kyle that day, please call the Crime Stoppers Upper Ohio Valley tip line at 877-TIPS-FOR-US. That's 877-TIPS-4-US. In today's episode, we're going to continue our conversation with Sergeant Rob Seyfried of the Wheeling Police Department to find out exactly what happened in the days immediately preceding Kyle's decision to go off the grid and the reason he chose to do so. We're also going to take a deep dive into how he arrived in Wheeling and the lingering effects that trip had on the case. So going back to why Kyle left Moundsville in the first place, you're saying that he wanted to go ghost. He wanted to drop off the grid. What's the reason for this?
So during the Moundsville's investigation, when Kyle was reported missing, it was brought to their attention that he and a couple of the guys he used to hang out with were involved in a minor crime, a petty theft. And you know, from everybody that we've talked to, Kyle was a really good kid, really good head on his shoulders. So, you know, I think that probably scared him, and he just didn't want to get in trouble. Like most kids, you know, when they do something they're not supposed to, they kind of run away from that. So I think that's the reason he wanted to go ghost and go back to Kentucky with his mom. Now, this petty crime that you mentioned that he was involved in, this was nothing horribly major. In fact, there were no charges ever filed against him or his friends on this. No, sir. But it was big enough, at least for him, to scare him enough to try to get out of the area. Yes, sir. I believe that was the case. You think he panicked and wanted to go to Kentucky to live with his mother for a while? Yes, sir. To get off the grid. Now, going back to how he got to Wheeling, Kyle asked the grandmother of a friend to take him to the Greyhound bus station in Wheeling. What's the story there? Yeah, so he got his friend's grandma to drive him up here to Wheeling. And you know, we confirmed that in Moundsville, and Detective Harris interviewed the individuals involved in that car. And then they dropped him off and returned to Moundsville. In the earliest days in the investigation into the death of Kyle Morgan, there were no immediate suspects. However, as the days wore on and tips began coming in, a few names began to weave themselves into the fabric of the investigation. Next week on Crime Stoppers, one of these characters will come to light based on this little bit of information from Sergeant Seyfried. After Kyle's body was found, he did not have a cell phone on him. You did find his cell phone. The Moundsville Police Department did recover his cell phone on his friend's grandma's property down in Moundsville. Crime Stoppers is presented by Main Street Bank, a production of WTRF7, Love OV, and Crime Stoppers Upper Ohio Valley. If you have any information on Kyle Morgan's murder or any other case in the Ohio Valley, please call the Crime Stoppers Upper Ohio Valley tip line at 877-TIPS-FOR-US. That's 877-TIPS-4-US. Even if it's already been covered or you think it might be insignificant, your tips are what keep stories like Kyle's fresh in the minds of the public and the case always one step away from being solved.